And so this signifies a massive program of destabilization has been executed. And you dovetail that with this incredible announcement, and this keeps happening. Associated Press, and of course they don't want Ahmadinejad to look weak, so the government's lying, obviously. Blast hits Iranian refinery as Ahmadinejad visits. And so right as he arrives, the plant blows up. An explosion blamed on gas leak. But Bush in 2008 put out a press release, or 2007, admitting that they've got groups and special forces inside there doing this. I mean, that's policy. And an explosion blamed on a gas leak rocked Iran's largest refinery on Tuesday around the time of a visit to the plant by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Iranian media reported that up to 2 people were killed. The blast occurred just before Ahmadinejad was to inaugurate an expansion project of the 400,000 barrel per day. And notice they just signed a deal, Iran did, with Iraq for this natural gas. And no, you're not. It's going to blow up, and we'll do it while Ahmadinejad's there. You dovetail that. I mean, this is this soft kill, low-intensity warfare, unconventional commando-type stuff, where they're really trying to start World War III right now. That is the banks that have hijacked this country. Libya, British attack helicopters to be deployed, seen as the next step to ground invasion. EU lines up resolution to start ground invasion that they promised they wouldn't do. NATO hits Tripoli. U.S. says rebels can open office. Bombing begins of their shipyards. Eight warships sunk 2 days ago. I mean, this is going into high gear. Webster, I mean, are they launching some type of? I mean, this is scary.
I think it shows that the U.S. British ruling elite has gone collectively insane, and that they're in a war psychosis. They're also in an austerity psychosis. They're obsessed with the idea that the dollar and all of their derivatives are going down the drain, and they're in a flight forward. So this is a time of tremendous irrationality. The problem we have is that the general public remains unaware of most of these very, very shocking and very, very disturbing and scary events, primarily because the entire left opposition, so-called peace movement and related people, foundation-funded in particular, have essentially given up on opposing Obama.
They're not opposing; they're cheerleading the wars. But Webster, I mean, let's back off from this for a moment. Look. Clearly, it's the old thing of ramming the Branch Davidian compound, saying, come out, we're your friends, and the Davidians run out, and the flare footage shows the special forces shooting them, or you watch a Hollywood movie like Mars Attacks, which is a joke on the Pentagon, an archetype with the aliens running around saying, don't run, we're your friends, and the humans come out of their houses, and the aliens laugh and shoot them. Obama comes out and says, we're your friends, Israel, give back the land to the Palestinians. And then a day later says, look, it was all just a psyop. They're saying, don't run, we are your friends. Netanyahu's smiling about all this. It's total theater as they launch the disintegration of the Middle East. I mean, this is hellish what they're doing.
On the other hand, there is a pushback. On June 15th, there will be the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And this, of course, is Russia, China, and the 5 Central Asian former Soviet republics there, ex-Soviet space, and it's also got Iran and India as observers. So if we can say behind Pakistan there now stands China. We've also had signals from Russia. Medvedev, who is the soft line, he's the weak side of the Russian establishment, in his press conference last week, Medvedev's line was, we face a new Cold War with the United States because of Obama's insistence on building the anti-ballistic missile systems in Romania, Poland, and elsewhere in Eastern Europe. It's a new Cold War.
And notice Obama said a year ago they weren't going to build the missiles. It's all, don't run, we're your friends, and you lower your guard and they stab you.
He lies. I guess that guy was right, the one who shouted it out. So we also have President Hu of China in meeting with some journalists, looking forward to this meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at the middle of next month. He said, our relations, Chinese relations with Russia, are at an all-time high. They have never been better. So behind Pakistan stands China, behind China stands Russia. That's pretty much the breakdown. But also don't forget this idea of the Pakistan-Saudi alliance that is, I think, very real. It's the cause, it's the immediate reason why this is happening right now in this time frame. And Bandar's Saudi diplomacy with Putin. So it's beginning to coalesce into a coherent bloc of opposition. I would appeal once again to India. India is very, very ill-advised to stay in this U.S.-India nuclear deal. It simply makes India into cannon fodder. It makes India into the expendable continental dagger of the U.S. and the British, a large land power to be used against China, Russia.
And the globalists wreck them even more economically in the process, and then they go into more debt. And the parasitic bankers get America more into debt and bankrupt us more, but we get patriotic in this new giant war the Rand Corporation said they needed 3 years ago in that very area to, quote, get their new world order. Now we're not worried about the global bankers looting us because we're all patriotic because World War III has started. Now, how do you see this program going? What's the globalists' next move then as they gallop forward into this conflagration?
Well, they're very ill-advised to do so. Right? One of the ways you can tell they're really crazy is they want to attack Pakistan even when their supply line goes through Pakistan. The whole invading force inside Afghanistan depends on this port of Karachi to Khyber Pass 1,000-mile land corridor, which goes right through the middle of Pakistan. And the Pakistani parliament unanimously voted, stop your predator drone attacks, or we are going to cut that supply line for you. Now, in terms of what's going to happen, again, the scenario, terror events that are directed against U.S. forces or even against the Pakistanis themselves would be used as a pretext for Obama to come out and say, with his unbelievable hypocrisy and condescension, he could say, we see that these Pakistanis are incapable of maintaining the security of their nuclear forces. Therefore, we're going to help them. We're going to give them assistance. And I've ordered the Joint Special Operations Command, and the specific group is called Task Force Orange. Task Force Orange would be that group that did that Bin Laden caper, whatever that.
And so the invasion and occupation of the Pakistani bases will be, don't run, we're your friends.
We're your friends.
And if anybody says don't occupy us, how dare the Pakistanis not let us occupy them? Those savages, oh.
But, of course, most people in the world don't believe this anymore. It would be good if the SCO or people like this came out and denounced this more obviously. But I'm afraid this is where we're going. So the main thing is, if these things happen, don't believe them and inoculate your friends, neighbors.
I mean, can't folks see this is a giant Brzezinskian global destabilization program being launched?
Well, I have the idea that if you go back to the beginning, the time right before World War I, you see something similar. Remember, the Sarajevo assassinations were at the end of June of 1914. The war didn't really get going until the first week of August. So you got this whole month of July 1914. And if you look at the literary materials that have come down to us from that time, you'll see that European public opinion was in a dream. It was in a trance. It was in an elegiac, idyllic mood. They probably sensed subconsciously that something horrendous was about to happen, but this had not yet become conscious for a lot of people. You look at the situation right now, we're closer to a general war than we've been, I guess, since about 2007, since the high point of Bush, Cheney, and the rogue B-52 and the Kennebunkport warning at that time. But right now, we've got the difference is we don't have a peace movement. We don't have any opposition. The people who used to oppose war, they're busy denouncing Gaddafi and supporting the attack on Libya, or they're out there saying Obama is a better warmonger than Bush and Cheney. He's more effective. He brings home he gets his man. So it's a terrible situation. So those of us who can understand this, and your listeners in particular, have to do everything possible to wake up public opinion in the United States. We are drifting towards some kind of general war, some kind of horrendous incident, and we've got this lunatic ruling class. We've got a bunch of incompetent, bungling, utopian people. They're perfectly incompetent. They're not in a position to run the affairs of this country, and unfortunately there's no visible organized alternative. But at least the idea that the situation in the world strategic sense is more serious, more threatening than it has been in the past 3 or 4 years. This idea we have to get across. And above all, don't believe false flag stories when it's pinned on Pakistan or so-called Al-Qaeda, but with the idea that that's really Pakistan.
Yeah, why on earth would Pakistan or anybody else carry out a 9/11 knowing that they would then be invaded and killed and overthrown? It's like, why would somebody jump in front of a truck? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Look at how they invaded Iraq, saying they were involved in 9/11. Webster, let's shift gears and get into Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Kahn, I know, had said the end of the dollar was near. I mean, what's going on here from your intel?
It is the CIA attack on the euro, and we need to remember that all last year, all of 2010 was consumed with the U.S., the CIA, Goldman Sachs, this idea dinner at Moness, Crespi, and Hart that was reported in the Wall Street Journal. The attack on the euro. You can't make the dollar look good, but what you can do is make the euro look very, very bad. You can attack Greece. You can attack Portugal, Ireland, Spain, other countries. You can use credit default swaps for economic warfare. Try to export the depression from the U.S. to Europe. So Strauss-Kahn, now he's the head of the IMF. He wants to be president of France. So his task was to keep the euro together until he could become president of France. Minimally that. That would mean something that the U.S. Wall Street, and of course Wall Street runs the CIA, couldn't accept. So they had to launch some kind of an attack. What it shows, by the way, is the desperation of imperialism. They're knocking over assets that they've used for 10, 20, 30 years, right? They put 15 years of work into building the bin Laden myth. Now they announce he's dead. They have Mubarak in power for 30 years. Then they decide to overthrow him. The power-sharing deal on the International Monetary Fund is really about 60 years old, 60 to 65 years old. It's that traditionally the head of the World Bank is from the U.S. and the head of the IMF is from Europe. And Europe has meant about half of the time, I think we've had 4 French bosses of the IMF, 1 German. So that's about almost half of the 12 IMF heads. You've also had people from countries like the Dutch or Sweden or other places, but generally it tended to gravitate toward France, Germany, the 2 leading countries on the continent. So that's a power sharing agreement. That basically says we're going to merge the old European imperialisms with this Anglo-American.
But as you said several years ago, this meltdown of the global financial system instituted by the mega banks, they intend to come out on the end completely dominant. And so that this upheaval would be purposefully accelerated during this period, and we're entering this incredible period of dangerous change.
But it also shows it's really not globalism. It's really Anglo-American, U.S., British imperialism. There's no place at the table for anybody who's going to represent a French interest or a German interest or a European interest. First it was going to be stop with the Europeans, now get a third world puppet. Get somebody from the developing sector. Get some British agent from someplace in Africa or something like this. Now it seems to be this woman Lagarde, and Lagarde is the most Britishized, Americanized in the whole French government. If Strauss-Kahn was lonely, he could have called up the Elliot Spitzer dating service. It absolutely makes no sense.
Webster, great job. Tarpley.net. Your story's up at Infowars.com. Thank you for tracking
Alex.
Thank you for tracking the build-up to World War III. Thank you, Webster.